What do you remember about World War II?
I remember all of it.
Even though we lost 400,000 service personnel in World War II, millions of people died during that time. The servicemen were warned that absolutely no one was to take any pictures of the concentration camp. They were told that if they did, they would be censored. They would be prosecuted for violation of orders and that sort of thing. It would be a very serious offense.
In May 1937, the SS Gruppenführer Eich reported that the Eddisberg site, a wooded hill about 4 miles from Weimar, could hold a concentration camp housing 8,000 inmates and 1,300 guards. The SS began construction in the summer of 1937, and they called the camp Buchenwald. The first intake of prisoners were forced to clear the woodland and build their own prison.
Alex Mazzucco was born on January 14, 1921 in New York City. He was one of 5 children. He grew up in a little town, Flemington, New Jersey, and was raised on a farm.
They had hundreds of acres of tomatoes.
What do you remember about the Mazzucco family?
Alex had a number of boys, brothers. And we were involved with them during the summer.
Alex graduated from Flemington High School and became a truck driver until he entered the service at the age of 21. When Alex became a soldier, he was in George Patton's famous division. Alex had his little brownie camera with him, and he did take pictures. Since they had been so severely warned not to take any pictures, he didn't have his developed until after he had returned to the States and was discharged. He, along with Patton, went across northern France and all through Germany. He earned 3 service medals during his time in the Army and was discharged, honorably discharged, at the age of 24. I don't know when he actually had the pictures developed, but I know it was many years after he left the service. Alex would always talk about the fact that he and the men who served with him hated George Patton because he pushed them so hard. Of course, you can tell by just looking at these pictures that horrific things happened in those concentration camps. It's just impossible to think about man's inhumanity to man. And yet you look at these pictures and you realize that this really did happen. General Eisenhower, who was commander of all the troops in the European theater, gave an order that all of the people in the surrounding towns around these concentration camps, including this one, should put on their very best clothes, whatever that was, and in this case, walk 4 miles to the concentration camp. As seen in one of the pictures here that Alex has taken, the people lined up in front of the concentration camps before they were cleaned, when they were in exactly the same state as all of our soldiers found them. Those people had to walk through the camp so that they themselves would witness what had happened there, so that they could never say, it didn't happen here. It was important for them to know. Eisenhower felt that this was very hallowed ground and that the people had to know what had taken place there. Eisenhower knew it was important. Alex thought it was important. I think it was very important because through the people of the area having to see it and it being preserved in photographs, the official photographs and those far from official, like the ones Alex took. Alex was only 24 years old when he took these pictures of the concentration camp. With such strict orders not to take any pictures, he knew he had to conceal them, and that's what he did. I'm not sure how he kept them hidden between that time and the time that he was discharged from the service. After he returned home, he began to date my husband Jim's sister, Rose Verm, and they were married, had 3 beautiful children and 5 wonderful grandchildren who he loved beyond measure. In 1998, at the age of 77, Alex passed away. Alex didn't talk about his years in the service. He certainly didn't talk about these photos, but that was not unusual for the veterans of World War II. These men who were just kids, who grew up much too fast, who saw things that nobody should ever see, who saw things that certainly young people shouldn't see, seemed to want to just put it all behind them as though it had never happened and to go on with their lives. It was certainly not uncommon for my 3 brothers who served to say nothing of World War II. They were proud of their service, but they didn't talk about it. Most didn't. It was only when they became old men, when they realized, I believe, what Eisenhower had said. It's so important for us to look at these pictures, as terrible as they are, as hard as it is to look at them, to realize man's inhumanity to man. Alex's pictures are terribly important, but we are important because we have to pass this history on to those who follow us.
When I was in school, grade school, we never discussed World War I. In the history books, there might have been 1 or 2 paragraphs. That was the end of the discussion on World War I. World War II wasn't much better.
It's so important for our people, our young people, to learn about these things, to study history, to include World War II and all of the battles since that time as well. Because we all know that it really is true that if you don't know history, you're certainly bound to repeat it.